Back to the channel. My name is Alex and this is Eurospec Garage. We're continuing the biggest project I've ever done here on the channel. Once again, to remind you guys, we have an Audi A3 Cabrio 2016 and a 2018 Audi S3. We're going to be combining these two cars to make what I think is going to be the only Audi S3 Cabrio in the United States of America. So that's kind of where we are. What I've started, what you guys have seen already is me ripping out the dash from this car. I'm using this car as kind of practice. I went ahead and removed the rest of the seats in here as well as the carpet. You can see all the carpeting from both cars is up here. So far this is where we're at. And so as you guys have seen in the last video, I pulled out the dashboard, the center console, as well as some other interior bits, and you can see nice and bare in here. So we have that done. On this side though, I've went ahead and removed the dashboard cage because I'm not going to be using the dashboard cage. I've decided to go the route of retrofitting each feature rather than taking the entire harness and trying to mate it to this car. The reason for that is the airbag system is different in this car compared to this car, so I don't want to mess with that. The airbag module is going to stay. All the other modules will be replaced though, so that'll be nice and fun, including the speaker system, the sound system, and things like that. So I decided it'll be probably better for me to leave the wiring as it is, unwrap it where needed in case I need to run some wires and things like that. So that is where we are at. Off camera I didn't show you guys this, but I did drop everything down from under the car, including the gas tank and the front wheel drive rear differential. I'll show you guys how to do that on this car here. This was just kind of practice. Very similar project as we did on the Jetta. However, the difference is that we're going to have to be doing some cutting and welding. The reason for that is, if you guys can see, the rear floor here is kind of like a tub. It sinks down, but if we go over here, difficult to tell with all the stuff, but the floor is raised in this car. Why? The reason is the rear differential takes up space and will eat up space in this trunk. So initially what I was planning to do was to cut out the floor here, cut out the floor here, and just replace the floors. However, if you guys take a look, this being a convertible, we have this cross member here that does not exist on the sedan. That will take a lot of effort to actually take out. I mean, we could, but it's going to be a pain in the butt. So I think instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut and fabricate just a piece right here, retain the depth of the floor, just shrink it. No matter how you look at it, the front-wheel drive cars have a spare tire. The all-wheel drive Cabrios do not have a spare tire, so no matter how you look at it, we're not going to be able to have a spare. Pretty good. Another thing I did off camera is I went ahead and pulled off everything from this engine, and basically it's almost ready to be yanked and pulled. The only thing I need to do is disconnect the exhaust behind there, but as you can see, pulled all the wiring out just to see the differences between this car and this car. I am happy to report that this is the 1.8T 4-cylinder from the A3 ECU. That is the ECU from the Audi S3. I was really concerned about the body side harness. So right now, this is the engine side harness. The body side harness is right there. So as you can see, this ECU has two different connection points. One is wiring from the car into the ECU, the other is from the ECU to the engine. So typically when you pull the engine, you can leave this this part of the ECU connected, and just everything else unplugs from there. But I was really concerned with the body side harness, given that these two cars have two different engines. How comparable are they? Well, if you just take a look, these ECUs have the same exact casing, which was promising. They also have the same exact connectors, so I could take this ECU and plug it into there if I wanted to. But what that means, and I actually went through pin by pin and compared the colors of the wires, I compared with the wiring diagrams. There's only 3 wires that are different as far as the ECU is concerned between this car and this car. This car has 3 additional wires. 2 of them go to the exhaust flap. Obviously this car does not have exhaust flaps, and it will. So 2 of those wires go there, and then one more wire goes to the inside. I believe it goes into the CAN bus to activate those flaps, those exhaust flaps. Everything else though is going to be plug and play from the body side. So I was really concerned that I had to pull all the wiring from this car and replace it with this car, but it turns out that I can keep the wiring and just run those 3 additional wires, and that would be it as far as the engine wiring is concerned. I want to pull the engine from here just so that we have enough space to play and work, and then once all of the auxiliary pieces are hooked up, we'll go ahead, we'll pull the engine from here, plop it into there. So yeah, that is an update on what's going on. In this video, what we're gonna do is we're gonna disassemble the front end, we're gonna disassemble the rear end. In the front, we'll put the bumpers away, we'll take apart all of the cowl components, and we'll begin the process, maybe even finish the process of disconnecting this engine from this car. Should not be a huge deal. So yeah guys, lots of exciting things. It is the biggest project I've ever done, and it's very daunting. I mean, looking at all of these wires, everything that's gonna go from this car into that car, kind of struggling, but I'll tell you what, as I kind of dug in, as I started looking into the wires, I realized that it is manageable. So it's one of those things where if you don't know what you're doing, if you've never done something before, it can seem very daunting, but if you start to take it kind of piece by piece, the end becomes visible. So at least that's the point I'm at right now. The mechanical stuff, moving the engines, the differential and subframe and things like that, that is all cake. But really, I want to make this car work like a true, proper Audi S3 Cabrio. So that's really kind of what's been eating me a little bit, but I'm gonna show you guys everything that I'm doing, all of the steps that I'm taking. Hopefully you guys learn something from it. Hopefully it motivates you to take on a project that maybe you think is daunting. That being said, all of the parts that I'm not gonna be using from the Audi S3, lots of interior components, the doors, the glass, other items, back seats and things like that, covers and trims and things like that. So, that being said, let's get to work. We're gonna pull the bumpers off. We're gonna begin the process of pulling the engine. We might pull it, we might not. We might as well pull the subframe, the front subframe, swap it over to the other car. All depends on how things are going. So, thanks so much for watching. Let's get to work. welcome back. You guys saw in the last clip how I just basically disassembled the entire front end. Here we are, we have everything disassembled, the front clip removed completely, and literally all that's left is the engine mount, the transmission mount, and it should be free. So if you can tell, I removed the hubs and the spindles. I removed the exhaust. The exhaust, there's a V-band clamp up here, and then two 13mm bolts facing that way. You can get at them from the top. Disconnect the HVAC lines right there. They're just the same exact mechanism as one of these guys. You just pull that clip and then yank it out. And then on this side, of course, disconnected the starter, the ground. There's a ground and a power, and the connector there. Disconnect the mechatronic. You just spin it and it comes out. And then back there, that's the shifter assembly. There's a little triple square bolt that you have to remove, and then there's a clip. You can see where my finger is right there. You just got to pull that up, and now this guy is free. And we are basically ready to begin pulling the motor. So what I'm going to do right now, as you can see, I have a chain to the two hoisting points up here, but of course the engine is going to want to tilt that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from underneath with a jack and lift that side up to really even it out. That way when I remove the bolts, it's not going to strip them and the engine's not going to drop down or anything like that. So I'm going to do that, and then the plan is we're going to rotate the engine out and set it here for now. A very similar process to the Tiguan. It's relatively simple to pull the engine. Of course, you got to take that off. You got to remove the exhaust. On all-wheel drive cars, you got to disconnect the prop shaft. Only connections back there are the oxygen sensors that usually clip in right there. You just unplug those. And one of the oxygen sensors goes off with the downpipe, the other one stays right behind the turbo there. So that is pretty much it. I'm gonna pull the engine transmission together. Again, guys, if you want the engine and transmission as a combo, I have the ECU that goes with it as well. So, I'm gonna put you guys up, and let's do it. Time-lapse, we got the engine out, so take a look. Didn't take too long, some prep work as I kind of mentioned. As you can see, I'm very quickly running out of space. But anyway, now on to this cavernous situation here. So before I put the S3 engine in here, I need to do some modifications and some changes. On the front-wheel drive car, the windshield washer bottle lives here. On the all-wheel drive one, it lives there. So I believe the mounting points for this windshield washer bottle match up with the driver's side auxiliary radiator. Really, while we're in here, we're gonna do a lot of the wiring. We might even swap the brake booster. I'm going to check the part numbers and things like that. I'm also going to check the part numbers of, sorry, that's the brake booster, that's the ABS unit. So I'm going to check the part numbers there, make sure that they're correct. The next thing I want to do actually is replace the steering rack. The steering rack on this car is different, it's faster, it feels better. We're going to replace that. And then another thing, guys, what I noticed when I was removing the hub assembly from the A3, I was taking a look at obviously the brake lines. I disconnected them, left them there, just making sure that everything is the same. What I noticed is this little hose says 3.4 millimeter, whereas the hose on this car was 3.2 millimeter. So that was a nice little catch. Obviously, if this is bigger, probably there's a reason for it. Also, everything else is pretty much the same except for the wiring. So if you take a look, the wiring grommets are in the same exact place. There's only one wire coming out of here. there are two wires coming out of here. Why? Well, one of them is for the adaptive dynamic suspension, and then the other one is for the height level sensor for that adaptive suspension. So we're obviously going to take the wiring from here while we're in here. We're going to take the subframe out. In order to do that, obviously you have the subframe bolts. There's 4 of them under here. And then the bottom of the steering column, if you remove that kick plate over there, there's a 13mm bolt that attaches the steering assembly to the steering rack. So we'll take that out and also disconnect the power steering wires, which are here, and here. And then that whole thing should come out as one assembly.